Thanks everyone for having us. I'm Dr. Ross Campensa, and I've been with Green Fire for over 30 years. Emergency physician, currently working with Canton Altman Emergency Physicians, and have been obviously closely working with EMS for a long time. Some of you out there already know me. And to let you know why we're here today, it states about the new quote unquote MCI tags. So, to start off with, to give you a little background on how we got to this point, a while back, I listened to a presentation from a gentleman, Don Zimmerman, who is from UH and actually works up in the Knott's trauma area, which is north of us towards Cleveland. And he did a presentation on triage tags to us. And I said, well, I've never really been a big fan of triage tags, and they just never been used, which we'll see in the presentation here in a moment. So, somewhat of a naysayer. But he did his presentation, and the one with the new tags did have some benefits to it as far as patient tracking. It was simplified. So, I did like those issues and kind of started to buy into it. So I said, fine, I'll help be involved with this. So I went ahead and initially took this back to Norton, Northeast Ohio Regional Trauma Network, in our area, and presented it. And it seemed well received, and decided, well, are we interested in the new tags? And are we interested in even a regionalization of how we use the tags, how we interact with different counties? And from Norton, I had positive feedback. Well, at that meeting, we were trying to determine how are we actually even going to come up with the tags, print the tags, funding. And Sarah Metzger, obviously with Nico 5, and also Angela Robinson, and then working also with Joseph St. John at our EMA through Summit County. But nicely between Angela and Sarah, then they were able to link into funding. And actually, I don't want to misspeak, and Sarah can talk later, but it seemed like then the idea was, heck, if we can open this up to the 13 county NECO 5 region, then we can even one secure some funding and actually expand this further than just the 4 counties under Norton. So that's how we basically came to today with this process. So it started off, I got a presentation, it expanded into Norton, Northeast Ohio Regional Trauma Network, and then with Angela and Sarah's assistance, the tags themselves at least then expanded out to the NECO Region 5 or 13 county region, which brings us up to today, because now we do have the tags and we would like to distribute them amongst the 13 county NECO 5 region. And I'll explain that a bit further. So that was kind of where this all was born from. Going through the actual tag presentation, just quickly going through a few things. One, reviewing mass casualty, obviously loosely defined as more patient than resources. Change obviously results in change in treatment process. And historically, we always used to think of MCIs as being more of a plane crash or bus accident, but unfortunately now we've included, um, obviously, unfortunately, more frequent now, having mass shootings and other events. And what I noticed initially with the old tags was a couple things. One, they're never used, but also I noticed there was issues with, well, how do we track the patients, hospital tracking, family reunification? And I'll tell you, when Don Zimmerman a while back did his initial presentation, that's what really caught my eye with the new tags, how well they actually helped with patient reunification and integrated the field in with hospital tracking. So as we already know, triage tags are rarely used. You know, Aurora, they were rarely used. Las Vegas, 500 victims, less than 1% had tags. And even in Ohio, unofficially, statistically, if you look at it, less than 10% of the time in any mass event have tags ever been used. And honestly, like I said, I initially was never really a fan of tags, because I said, well, they're just never used. And my opinion after 3 decades in emergency medicine was because they almost really just didn't seem to serve any purpose. That's why in anything I've been involved with, why we didn't really use them. So unfortunately, the slides have kind of stopped for a moment, but until I actually show you the tags, it's not important. But ended up happening at that point then was they finally said, well, the tags at least do have some semblance of prioritization of patients with triaging, if indeed they're used, have ability to re-triage the patient. But actually, the main thing again that caught my eye was that it served as assist us with tracking of the patients and integrating in with tracking with the hospitals from field to hospitals, as we mentioned. The current tags not haven't really been that helpful as far as that is concerned with the current met tags. They don't really have a wristband, the barcodes that they use, so that was always an issue. And I even looked at the med tags or disaster management's tags or smart tags. And then finally, as I said, I was introduced to this new type of tag to help solve some of these issues. Am I able to advance? Oh, go ahead and advance again, or I can do it. All right, sorry about that. Can I advance again? Yeah, there we go. So we saw the previous tag. So that got us up to what the new tag looks like. And the new tag, actually what we were hoping to achieve with it, and I'll show you the different parts, is one, that it would include a wristband. The wristband would have a barcode. The tag itself would have other barcode stickers that could be placed on the EMS tracking sheet, and then extra ones if you needed to use it for possessions or other issues. And again, trying to keep the tag very simplified, just a few spaces for simple vital signs, area where you still use your standard green, yellow, red, black triaging system. As you'll notice on the tag, we did away with little stick figures and pictures that, one, if tags were ever used, no one used those sections anyway. So just a very simplified treatment section. So actually looking at each portion then of the tag specifically, one, it does have very rudimentary patient information, which could be collected by the treatment transport area, or even just a name and date of birth if possible in the treatment transport area. And then the medics can fill out all the rest of the information en route so it doesn't delay things on scene. The big thing is it does include the wristband at the top. And the wristband at the top then would be attached to the patient. It does have the barcode. The barcode obviously matches all the other barcode stickers. And we specifically stated that the barcode needed to integrate into M-Track or EM-Track. So we know now the state went away from O-Track and now the hospitals are using M-Track. So the tags are integrated into the hospital M-Track system, EM-Track system. So the wristband on the patient and the barcodes then could actually integrate. So from field to hospital. And if there's one thing hospitals loves, it's wristbands, right? You can't enter there and have any type of issue without getting a few different wristbands. So there's the barcode stickers. There is the simplified vital sign area. Many patients may just at best get one set of vitals. We included a couple other sections though, just in case you had a chance to do repeat vitals and even re-triaging of the person. So we see the standardized triage area. We even made those boxes color coded, but with central white out areas, because someone even commented, well, if you put a check mark on the green area, you can see your check mark. But if you put a check mark on the black area, you wouldn't be able to see it. So we even did that. We have the simplified, very rudimentary treatment note section because at most, maybe someone may place something in that area. And then there is the rubber band opening in the hole to attach this to the patient. So the back of the tag has nothing. The front of the tag has the bare necessities for what we felt we needed for a mass casualty to keep it at least somewhat useful. Now, the question did come up, where would you apply these tags? And the first thing we stated was, well, let's first define how we look at MCIs now. We see static events and dynamic events. Static events are what we always used to think of as a mass casualty, like a bus accident, where I'm sorry, like a bus accident where the victims would stay on scene, would wait for the boxes with flashy lights to get there. They had no other way realistically to get to the hospital. So for the most part, they would stay there, wait for care, et cetera. So like I said, that'd be the classic bus accident. Now, dynamic event was actually what we thought of as with active shooters, where the people want to get the heck out of Dodge. And most patients actually self present to the hospitals, which we actually noticed even in this recent event that happened in Akron. So, how we defined it is each of those static and dynamic events, though, at least have some semblance of a treatment evacuation area, definitely more formalized, possibly in a static event, where it's definitely more in flux in a dynamic event. But that may be something where we set up RTFs, Rescue Task Force. So we called that a casualty collection point, or you can call it an evacuation care zone. And what we stated is that the normal triaging of people where they lie does not include the tags. So these MCI tags, we were training people, if at most you would actually apply them when they finally get to the boxes with flashy light area or the treatment evacuation area, where then the patients could have the tags applied, have the wristband applied. The transport officer then would put the barcode sticker on their transport sheet to try to correlate with where did that barcode, what's that patient's name, where did they go to, very rudimentary data, which we're going to see in a moment. So that would only be done next to the rigs themselves. Still in the field area where patients are at and where you do your initial life-saving care, those patients would still just get the ribbon, color-coded ribbons. So the tags were meant for the treatment, evacuation, transport area, not where you do your initial triaging of patients. That still would just be a very quick ribbon or tag that you would use. Or if it RTF, you may end up using what we call sifting and sorting, where they have the black white tag. You're either alive or not. You get the orange tag and then proceed from there. So again, these tags were still never meant to be used out in the actual care area of the initial triaging care of the victims. It's more of right next to where the treatment transport area would be, or really the transport area. So the transport person then would actually place a barcode sticker on the transport unit log. At most, try to put a barcode sticker there, a name, possibly their tag color, destination, and en route would be fantastic to try to help with distribution of patients and reunification of the patients. As you'll notice also on the at least the versions that we came up with for transportation unit leader, we actually purposely under each squad put 1 through 4, and that was by design, because then it would remind people that during a mass casualty, you don't want to just have one person per one squad, which you do every day. It would try to emphasize, hey, you could have a advanced care victim on the cot, so the red color coded victim on the cot, but you actually may be able to transport a yellow or a green victim on the bench seat, et cetera, which we know is not what we do every day. But it just reminded the transport officer, get in reasonably as many people as you can in each rig to try to expedite transport of the victims. So we did that purposely too. We were hoping to shoot for January 1st as our time period then to try to get the tags out in service. Like I said, today we're talking with all of you through EMA, hospitals, public health. And then we were hoping that maybe by the 1st of January to have everyone understand the tags and where they would integrate into your system. I do write down questions. We'll take questions in a moment. I know Chief Funai is going to go over regional response, but I already did field a couple questions from Angela. And like I said, one question was, well, how did you envision the rollout of this? And what we've done already is myself and Chief Funai, and then Rita Chambers from Akron, we actually started off almost kind of beta testing it in Summit County. So with Summit County, we actually did all 3 presentations. The one presentation I did on the tag itself, which is NECO 5 wide. We also did the regional response framework, which really is within the Norton sphere of influence. And then we did the county specific presentation, which was with Summit County. So that's how we envisioned the rollout. As far as the next question had come up, what about these barcodes and scanning? Are you expecting EMS to do this in the field? Initially, no. Actually, the hospitals should already be set up with M-Track. They should already have M-Track system. The barcodes are M-Track compliant. So the hospitals is a must. Again, we envision the wristbands and stickers, and then the patients going into the hospital. You still could work forward or backwards, identifying patients. The ideal would be that M-Track is available to pre-hospital providers. I understand some even have already set it up, which is nice, but you don't really need that at this point. At least the hospitals do have it. It still would integrate in. The ideal world would be over the next whatever forward time period, if providers could get on board with that, then that would be great. But right now, we envision this just being the tags. The hospitals have M-Track, and at least now patients we're providing are M-Track compliant, and we still could even work backwards. Forward with patients that we have barcodes and names, or in reverse where we have an unconscious victim where all I have is a barcode, I don't have a name, but then the hospitals later in the disaster can work backwards with us to actually link up a name with that barcode sticker and number. So just to answer a couple questions about rollout and the tags, the scanning of the tags themselves. So, okay. Well, I will turn it now over. As I said, the tags are NECO Region 5 wide. The regional response framework, my understanding, would be within the Norton subdivision of NECO 5, which would be Summit, Portage, Stark, and Medina County, mainly just because that's the only area that we have basically a sphere of influence over for this portion, at least to start with. So, thank you.
That's right. Absolutely. Thank you. So let me take over here for a minute, and I'm going to share with you a little bit about that regional response. And what we developed was a framework, and a framework, as Dr. Campensa said, for our sphere of influence. So really only applies to those in the Norton area, but this was certainly intended to be a parallel action to a similar thought process and things that were happening in the Knots area. And you say, well, how did that happen? And it was really kind of a unique moment, I guess, as we were undertaking this mass casualty review, because we had a number of things all come into alignment that were all looking for change in different areas in the specifically the Summit County mass casualty plan. You know, we had some local efforts amongst the police chiefs and fire chiefs in Summit County to improve our response to active shooter events or hostile events. And in doing so, it quickly became clear that those things, those same issues that were coming up in those discussions needed to be incorporated into the mass casualty plan. At the same time that we saw expansion of the hospital systems in Summit County, Cleveland Clinic and university hospitals expanding their footprint of EMS programs and medical control. And they were certainly looking for some unity in the paramedic protocols and SOPs that govern our mass casualty plans. At the same time that our hospital emergency preparedness partners have been looking for some process and improvement and some help in the areas of distribution of patients and communications and family reunification. And at the same time that we found that our trauma system was ready for some improvement, specifically in regard to the sharing of the patients or getting patients to definitive care and not just picking them up from the scene and moving them to a hospital that's overwhelmed and can't really provide the care that they need. Uh, whether it's the specialties that that facility has or whether it's just sheer volume of patients that are there. And so Nico 5 and Tommy Smoot, our EMA director, and as Dr. Campensa already mentioned, with Sarah Metzger and the EMA staff from Summit County, was able to get that grant to fund these tags. And when they did that, we were able to expand the regional influence from, first of all, not just Summit County, but to our whole Norton area, and then not even the Norton area, but to all of Nico 5. So that's how you find yourself stuck here listening to us today. But that was the goal of the regional response, is develop this framework that is kind of just the broad structure of what a mass casualty response is going to look like, that still leaves room for your specific department plans and SOPs and your specific county mass casualty plans. So that's what we're looking at here, is the broader view, I guess, of how we can collectively respond to a mass casualty. Step one, we purposely called out unified command and establishing unified command. As we were undertaking this review and trying to develop this regional approach, we made sure to include our partners. So our hospital partners, our EMS partners, our fire department, police, law enforcement, EMA, dispatch. And so one of the things that we definitely needed to emphasize was establishing that unified command, that even if this is one of those dynamic events, it's an active shooter event, and clearly law enforcement is going to have the lead role in figuring out what's happening, we need to follow those principles of NIMS and ICS and unified command, so that all of the issues, so we make sure that we incorporate all of the operations issues, the resource requests, the development of situational awareness, that all partners have that, safety considerations, and the sharing of information. Just making sure that we're operating in the effective, safe, and efficient manner that we can. So after that, then we get into the steps of the mass casualty plan. And the first one is notification. And so we have some county specific things that we included in this, but regionally, kind of the two concepts that we want to have out there is immediately everybody wants to know the magnitude or how big it is, or specifically in a mass casualty, how many patients are we talking about? And then in just a minute, we're going to flip to a slide and look at static versus dynamic again. But those two things come up with notification. And then the rest of this slide, you see some things that really, as we talk about region, we're getting more local again. So now I'm really talking about Stark County, Summit County. We just have, in Summit County, we've modeled the Stark County system of sending some fire officers to the hospitals to communicate back and forth with the EMS transport officer on the scene to help manage that flow of patients and to help balance the pile of patients that each hospital is facing. So we'll talk about that more as we go too. But specifically, why are we asking across the region to declare if this event is static or dynamic? Well, first of all, a static event generally is not an evolving incident. The patients and the victims that are there are not necessarily feeling the need to run. They have more of a tendency to stay there and wait for us to arrive and to package them up and to transport them. It tends to be limited in scope of a defined area. The victims maybe don't even have anywhere to go. For instance, if at the Akron Canton Airport, which is here in the city of Greene, there's a perimeter fence that can help us keep them contained if the incident happens to happen there on airport property. So what is a static event? Dr. Campensa gave you a couple examples of bus, train, plane crashes, perhaps a carbon monoxide event in a business, those sorts of things. And this is what our plan has always been developed around, as a static event. We use our standard triage methods with our MCI kits and our survival scan and our red, yellow, green, black tags, kind of what we've always trained for. And then as we undertook this review of our plans and this regional approach, we figured out that we needed to make sure that the plan was adjusted to accommodate dynamic events. So a dynamic event, it's evolving. It's not over yet. It's still getting worse. There's cascading events. The victims are highly motivated to get out of there, to want to run, to find safety. Perhaps even the area is not clearly defined. It's not bound by a perimeter fence, or it's moving. It's not staying here. There continues to be ongoing harm in multiple locations, that kind of thing. Those victims have a desire to self-transport and not necessarily to wait to be neatly placed into a treatment area and tagged by us. Examples are an active shooter or violent kind of event, perhaps even a widespread weather event, a flood or an ice storm or a tornado, perhaps could be something like this. These aren't strict definitions, but I think the concept or the feeling that they give you, I think you can relate to that. So one big change that comes up in this new approach, this regional approach to things, is having a modified triage method for when you're facing one of these dynamic events. And that's why we ask for the type of event, static versus dynamic, to be communicated to the responders from the beginning. So when we're looking at one of these dynamic events, one of the easiest ways to picture this is perhaps to consider the type of issue where you're going to deploy rescue task forces. So rescue task forces by design are operating in a warm zone. And generally our traditional MCI plan was structured and geared and created for a cold zone. So where there is not that threat to the responders. So now we're talking about a warm zone action. And we've adopted this model that you see on the picture on the slide there of changing the way that we're going to move through that triaging of these patients. And it becomes more of a sifting or a sorting, sifting the patients that can move on command and sorting those that need to be littered or carried to be moved, or those that are what would traditionally be a black tag, those that are expectant or have already passed. And so what we ask for is not to use your normal MCI kit, red, yellow, green. We're switching to, on a rescue task force situation, only two colors of triage, and it's orange or it's the black tag. And sometimes that black tag is actually like a black and white striped tag. Those are the equivalent. They mean the same. That patient is either a DOA or expectant. And it's in this environment, sometimes they use the black and white just because it's more visible in that environment. So an orange tag is someone who still needs to be moved or littered. And the reason for this is when you start to try to coordinate between the rescue task forces. So if you consider, what do I have on my next slide? Okay, we're staying here. So if you consider the way that we anticipate this working for our rescue task forces, the first rescue task force into the warm zone triages the patients as they come to them. They address the immediate life threat with the equipment that you see there on the slide. They flag that patient with tape. In this particular case, if they're doing some treatment, that's going to be orange, and they move on. And they continue to push further and further into the warm zone to triage as many patients as they can until they run out of supplies. When they run out of supplies, now they can be a movement team, and they can help move the patients that have been flagged orange back to a casualty collection point. The other critical thing that they need to do is they need to coordinate with the other rescue task forces that get put into the warm zone. So the second RTF into the warm zone, they're looking for that direction from the first RTF on where to go. One of the reasons for the orange flagging is to quickly identify for that rescue task force, if you picture them making a push down a hallway, that they do not need to stop and re-triage or readdress the patient that they're passing on their way to whatever their area of operation is going to be. In exercises, it seemed that our rescue task forces spent a lot of time triaging and re-triaging the same people. And so we've adopted this orange and black flagging method to help us not do that, to not waste that time. So the second RTF into the warm zone continues to push further in and address patients, address their life threats until they run out of supplies, then they can be a littering team as well. Same thing then with the third RTF into the warm zone. They continue as they're directed until all the patients get sifted and sorted. And when they are, then they too can assist in gathering those patients into the casualty collection point. So what we see then is the next area to highlight is the role of the transport officer. So in the past, we've had various ways that we've tried to coordinate between our hospitals about how many patients they can take, or what is their current capacity, or how many patients from here are going to be sent there, and those sorts of things. And what we found through the looking at the national responses to these dynamic events is that those particular methods of trying to tightly control that flow of the patients falls apart in the face of a dynamic scene. So this is where I told you we have adopted what was developed in Stark County, where they have their IMAT team, which is a group of fire officers that get dispersed to the hospitals to get that firsthand knowledge of the situation at that particular facility and report that back to the EMS transport officer in the field. So this was kind of a big deal in our region to take that control of the flow of the patients from a coordinating hospital and move it back to the field to the transport officer. To get that transport officer the information they need to make the good decisions about where to spread out these patients, we put other fire officers responding to the ERs, including the freestanding ERs, to gather up that information about how many patients are self-presenting there. You know, the history says that when these things happen and patients are looking to escape, they're, you know, if they're not from the area, or even if they are, they tend to go to the hospital that's closest. And that may not be the most appropriate facility. It may not even be a trauma center. So we've developed this system or adopted it from Stark County to try to help that flow and manage that flow. And this is a big culture change in our region on the fire service side, to go ahead and accept responsibility for moving these patients, not just from the field to the hospital, but also to work on, if there's a hospital that's overwhelmed, is getting resources assigned to that hospital to help them move patients or transship them from one hospital to another. That is one reason why the triage tags that Dr. Campensa just shared with you became so critically important. Because another thing that you learn from studying the MCIs that have been happening around the country, and specifically the dynamic events, is it is a huge challenge to do the family reunification piece. So these triage tags that we have shared with you, with your county EMAs, with the intention of the county EMAs distributing them to the fire departments and hospitals in their county, is now, no matter when that patient gets introduced into our overall care system, whether they ride to the hospital in the back of an ambulance, if they ride to the hospital in the back of a police cruiser, if they ride to the hospital in the back of a minivan, wherever our responders or the hospital staff encounter that patient, they can put that wristband on them, and they are now we have a way to scan them and get them integrated into M-Track, which includes all of these patients into that one system. So ultimately, we can turn that barcode back into a patient name and then get that patient name reunified with the family. So if it works out and that barcode gets associated with that patient in the field, great. If it doesn't happen, and it doesn't happen until they arrive at the hospital, this system's now been adjusted so it can accommodate that, because the hospitals have the same tags with that integrated wristband that we have in the field, and everyone gets accounted for within the same event. So that is that slide that I just ruined for you, because I told you all about that. So with that, we've kind of used up our allotted time. So I'm sorry that we talk fast. We want to make sure, though, that we address your questions, because we told you we are operating within our sphere of influence, which is mostly just Norton. But yet that good work happened to get these tags spread across all of NECO 5. So without having the authority to make you do it, our plan is that you are taking this information back to your counties and sharing it to make sure that these tags are integrated all throughout the entire NECO region. So we want to take a minute and address questions.
Great presentation. Thank you both. A lot of great information. I would like to open it up for people to go ahead and just unmute and ask a couple questions.
This is Luke Hall from Cleveland Clinic. I put 2 questions in the chat there, so you can take a look at those if you want, but I'm happy to ask them verbally as well. I guess one, what's the vision? I picked mine up the other day and started the distribution process and gave them to my EMS coordinators at my hospitals. But is there a formal plan for rolling out education on this? Is there a one pager or anything that the region is putting out? Like, how are we supposed to educate on this? Who's responsible specifically? Obviously, the hospital EMs can take care of the hospital side of the equation, but as noted, I mean, the efficacy of these tags is really tied to using them universally. So for EMS organizations, how is that education being driven? And then secondly, I know that the hospitals are looking at doing some sort of regular drilling on these tags, some kind of system to incorporate these into everyday operations, but is there any push on the EMS fire side to do that currently?
At least the part I can comment on. What we wanted to have this meeting today because what we envisioned, as I said, we kind of beta tested it with Summit County, since that where we're from. Everybody in NECO 5, then they can have all 3 PowerPoints if they want, but everyone within NECO 5 then would receive the initial MCI tag PowerPoint. And also now you have a video of this presentation, so you can use us as the presentation on the tag, or you can use our video with the PowerPoint and then supplement it with what you've learned. So at least all the EMA people then within NECO 5 will have the PowerPoint. You have this as a recorded video. And then, as we said, we've had this, back and forth so you could help answer specific questions. So again, yes, we envision the EMAs being the point people in all the counties in NECO 5 to at least do the tag distribution portion using the PowerPoint I just used, which will be given to everyone. And now you even have this as a training video and then can supplement that portion. If everyone wants all 3 PowerPoints, that's fine, but those then within the Norton region would be interested in not just using the MCI PowerPoint, but also the regional response PowerPoint, and then again can use today as the training video for it for each of those parts. Now, in Summit County, we had the 3rd PowerPoint, which obviously we didn't show today because it's Summit County specific. But what we've done is we've already had one session with our county people. Again, Joseph, you can comment on this, but Joseph St. John is our EMA person for Summit County. What we did is we've already put out one training session. We're going to put out a follow-up training session. And still for those that can't show up, they can watch the video and see the PowerPoint. But at our training sessions, then we went over the MCI tag PowerPoint, the regional response PowerPoint. We also went over our Summit County plan because obviously it was our Summit County rollout. And then at the end of the session actually is when Joseph went ahead and distributed tags to each of the people as their parting gifts as they left. So they basically were a captive audience to hear the presentation. So that's how we started the educational rollout piece. So I envisioned each of the other EMA people in their counties at least having the MCI PowerPoint of the tag itself and now this video presentation. Like I said, you can have all three, no big deal. But again, our sphere of influence then from NICO would be to roll it out that way. For the Norton region people then would have both the tag and the regional response PowerPoints and now the video presentation. And then the people in Summit County, actually, we did our specific third portion, which was the county plan.
Yeah.
Does that, I hope?
Yeah, and then Luke, the second part of your question, what if any efforts are being made to incorporate the tags into routine operations or drilling outside of the hospital? We were only able to secure the funding for this initial round of tags. So we don't necessarily have a NICO, 13 county plan for everybody use your tags on this exercise. Or you can use them though as you need to become proficient with them. But it's not necessarily a universal.
No, but there was actually there was a fair number of,
Yeah.
Sarah, you could comment on this.
This away.
But there was a fair number of tags distributed where a fair number of them can be used in drills or training. I know people in the past have also brought up the idea of, maybe Triage Tuesday where you actually maybe, not every month, but maybe quarterly or biannually, you pick the first Tuesday of the month and you actually, your EMS people, when they respond on a quote unquote trauma call, actually apply the tag, the wristband, use the barcode so they get a little bit more comfortable with it. So to answer the second part of your chat question, we are entertaining some of those ideas and thoughts. I know, Sarah, you mentioned to me informally the other day that you had something from Northwest Ohio, I believe, where they have already started this kind of process. So we are looking at that as maybe an add-on to this process as we continue to have this grow.
Yes, that's correct, Chief and Dr. Campensa. Thanks. As to the numbers of tags, hopefully someone from Summit County can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was 45,000 tags were ordered that were distributed to the EMA directors in the county to further distribute within their county as they see fit. On the hospital side, we ordered 16,000 or 19,000. I believe it was 16,000 tags for hospital distribution. So the hospitals are going to get good hefty stack for their use as well. And yeah, just like Dr. Campensa talked about, we're currently in talks, in the works, working on trying to work towards Triage Tuesdays, what that looks like, how that would be implemented. Obviously, we have a lot of buy-in with the hospitals. Certainly, I think we're looking to potentially expand that to EMS if there are those who are interested. Not something we can mandate, but would encourage the participation region-wide. So we have a work group that we're forming on that. If there's anyone who's interested in participating, you're welcome to email me, but we'll be trying to put some of the, kind of framework around how that Triage Tuesday concept might work, similar to what's done in Northwest, just like Dr. Campensa mentioned. That's a program that I think they've been running for quite some time. So we're going to pick up all the good work that they've done and make it, specific to NICO and hopefully something that'll be helpful to all of us.
Sounds good. Good morning. This is Angela Robinson from Summit County EMA. So all of the regional EMA directors have received their tags. They received them sometime last month, and I am not for sure if they distributed them to their partners within their counties, but it's up to their discretion who they provide those tags to. I know Summit County, as Dr. Campensa said and Chief Funai said, there was a training. Summit County, we did distribute those tags to some of the hospitals and local fire departments within Summit County. Some partners have not picked up those tags yet, but we do have them still here on site for Summit County if you need tags. I do have one question though, because I think with this training, we want to make sure that everyone at least feels comfortable using this tag. Of course, it's going to take some discussion within your own county to determine more what that may look like within each individual county within the 13 counties. And as it's been stated, there are more training opportunities that may be coming after today. But does everyone on this call at least have just a general idea of how to use this tag, and do you feel comfortable using this tag?
We typically take silence as acceptance on these calls, so unless somebody wants to speak up and say that they need something more, I think, Angela, the answer to your question is probably yes.
Okay, and so I know I did receive another question specifically about MTrack, with a portion of how do you scan, an MTrack, what is it, how do you scan, how do you get those abilities? So can we make sure that we address that on the call today? And of course, this tag, of course, we would like it scanned in the field, but if some don't feel comfortable scanning it in the field, then I'm sure it's the way that, the tag can just be written on without it being scanned. But I'm not the professional to speak to that matter. So
Yeah, Angela,
can
this is
someone
Sarah.
speak to MTrack and the scanning versus not scanning?
Sure, Angela, this is Sarah. I can chime in on that. So like was
Thank
mentioned for sure, and was mentioned in the presentation, all of the hospitals have access to EMTrack, and we're working diligently to get familiar with, get comfortable with that system. It has been a little bit of a challenge at times. We are still actively discussing EMTrack and how do we become more comfortable with that? So right now it's pretty much hospital based. I think there's very few EMS departments in the region that have even access to EMTrack. However, if in the field, EMS, EMAs, if that's something that is of interest to you, getting access to the EMTrack system to learn how that functions, how you could scan those tags in the field and enter that information in the field, we will be sending out an email next week that just kind of gives a link to a survey that you can fill out to gain access to the system when you get that email back. This is all running through the state of Ohio, the Ohio Department of Health, who currently manages that system. So they've set up a link where you can note that you want registration into the system. They then email you back with your credentials to log in, as well as some training materials. So as of right now, that's the extent of the support that we have for EMS. There's a gentleman at the state who's very actively involved in the system and would probably be able to give some more direct training to departments or counties. But as far as EMS is concerned in the field, that's what we have access to. So we'll be sending that out, either Angela through you or directly to the EMA directors in the region, in case you do have folks who are interested in getting on EMTrack beyond just the use of the hospitals. But it's a learning curve. It's a new system for us. Like I said, not always that straightforward. We're working through it all the time to improve our proficiency in the system as well.
Thank you, Sarah. And then there's a question, is there a fee for EMTrack for departments?
No, there is not. 100% paid for by the Ohio Department of Health currently for all users.
Okay. And then do you mind if I send this back to Chief Funai and Dr. Campensa? There's a question about how to use this tag during hazmat incidences requiring decon as an example of a dynamic incident that would trigger tagging protocols. So Chief Funai, you're my expert. As I was procuring this project, there was a lot of excitement around it. We wanted to make sure that it happened. I appreciate all the regional EMA directors for approving this project to move forward. And I'm happy that many of you are currently on this call, to support this idea and support the movement. But Chief Funai, are you able to speak about how this tag or what this tag would be used during any hazmat incidents?
Yep, I certainly can. So let's be careful with that expert word though, okay, Angela? It's more that I drew the short straw than I'm an actual expert. But just to, Luke brings up a good point. What a great application for this tag. And so just because there wouldn't necessarily be a large number of patients in this supposed hazmat incident, from my point of view, that shouldn't limit you. I mean, I think these tags are out there as a tool to be used. So in this particular case, the wristband could go on the patient that you ran through a decon operation. And so everything that all the personal belongings that got bagged up and thrown in the overpack drum, you could use one of those peel off stickers to throw in the bag with it to help identify that that bag of personal effects matched to this particular patient. So just because there may not be enough of those patients that it's a mass casualty, I think does not limit your use of the tag if it has that kind of utility for you. Those peel off stickers, we have not necessarily defined exactly what they can be used for. It's kind of open to your creativity. I mean, I could see creating a log for myself if I had a situation where we had an adult patient and they had a child that were both caught up in this mass casualty, of peeling one of the stickers off the child's tag and attaching it to the parent's tag just to help in that reunification process later. I mean, I need to add a note to clarify what's this other number doing on the tag. There's no pre-printed spot for that. But I think it's up to our creativity to use this thing as a tool to help these incidents go better. And specifically, it could go in the treatment or notes section, that blank section that's on that tag. So yes, I do think this certainly would apply in that hazmat situation that Luke referenced.
Yeah, so Chief, just to clarify, I mean, I think, on the hospital side, we will use these during hazmat incidents regardless. I think and perhaps some of my other colleagues, one thing we're looking for is, as we roll this out, it's a regional tag, and what we've struggled with traditionally is trying to make the processes uniform across. I have hospitals in 2 different counties, Stark and Tuscarawas, and dealing with all those different fire departments and all the different EMS organizations, and just continuing to make a push. Like, I feel like as hospitals, we are very much on the same page. If a decon patient rolls into Akron Children's, because we all train together, we have similar processes and procedures, it's going to look the same as it looks at Cleveland Clinic Mercy or wherever. But on the EMS side, when we talk about rolling out this tag and using it practically and rolling it out in the field, that's where we get a lot of variability. So what I'm trying to get at, I guess, is how is this group, are we trying to push it out and make things more uniform, or is this just still kind of, we're going to have to push it on our own in the counties and try to get everybody on board as individual hospitals? That's what I'm getting at. Is it going to be hospital led, EMA led? Is the region going to lead efforts to try to standardize the approach? That's what I'm getting at.
This is Dr. Campensa. And then Sarah and Angela and Joseph, you guys can comment if you want. I mean, my envisioning of storyboarding it was, and the same thing that you mentioned, Luke, as far as trying to unify things. So what I was happy with was, at least I know that all of the counties within NECO 5 are going to have the same tag, barcodes, wristband, hopefully a simplified system where they're actually used instead of just never used. I'm happy that at least if I was in Stark County or Tuscarawas County, if I was in a cross-county mass casualty, at least I'm familiar with the other person's tag, which was actually just my rudimentary first goal. Now, as far as Stark and Tusk, I can't comment, because then my next goal, where I only have sphere of influence over, is Norton. So at least I know within the Northeast Ohio Regional Trauma Network, should you have an event in Stark County cross covering into Stark County, which would be a Canton Akron event. So we have a Canton Akron event at the airport, and that includes both Stark County and Summit County. Now, I really like that situation because, I mean, no one likes mass casualty, but I like how it's going to be handled, because not only are the tags unified, but now the regional process, at least the initial portion of handling a mass casualty, now the Summit County providers can at least interact with Stark County can interact with Summit County. So that's why I really liked the regional attachment to the tags, but our only sphere of influence is over Norton, which is Summit, Stark, Portage, and Medina. And then again, we have our county specific. So I think the baby steps to this was, for the first time, I think ever, an actual NICO region at least is going to have cross counties being able to at least use a similar tag. The tags are simple. The tags have M-Track compliance. So hopefully now, at least the counties, at least cross county and a mass casualty, will be able to communicate at that portion. Then, as I said, within Norton, now, like I said, if it was a Summit County, Stark County plan event, then I can tell you not only of the tags, but how the initial portion of a disaster is handled is actually going to be unified, and we can speak the same language. But again, we only have so much sphere of influence to do that. So at least I can tell you, NICO 5, cross county would be using the same type of tag, how it works, integrates into the hospitals. I mean, if I could get it spread where the rest of the state even adopted a similar tag and a similar initial process, I think that would be fantastic, because then any cross county situation, we could speak the same language. Like you're dealing with Stark County, it sounds like, in Tuscarawas. Well, some people in Portage County right now are speaking to the people up in Geauga County, which is outside of NICO 5. So they, do they have the same tag, not the same tag? Probably do, just because they're under knots. But ideally, it would be nice if every county, wherever you're at in Ohio, cross county could communicate. But at least I can tell you, within NICO 5, you're going to have a similar tag and process. Within Norton, I can tell you, you would have a similar regional start off to an MCI, is the only thing I could comment on.
Yeah, and this is Angela. I think I agree with you, Dr. Campensa. It's great if so this is the starting point, and we just wanted to make sure that, everyone had the tags and everyone knew how to use the tags. Of course, there's going to be more discussion on it being rolled out in individual counties. And I'm not sure who all those players are, but I'm hoping that if people that are on this call are in some of the same counties, that at least you all have those follow-up conversations with each other on what that would look like. I would hate to, I don't know, put any requirement, to use this tag on some of the counties, especially some of the smaller counties that may not have the financial resources to, meet up to that requirement. So I think, Luke, if maybe you can email Sarah some of the partners that you're thinking specifically who would need this training and who would need this information, then, maybe it's worthwhile to have a training with them. But I don't know if I don't know if each county can say that their EMS has to use that tag, even though we know what's ideal. So I'm not for sure. But everyone will get a copy of this virtual training today and some of the handouts. And if any of the county EMA directors have any questions for me or regarding to this training, then please feel free to reach back out after the call today.
Great, thank you. Are there any other final questions?
Yeah, this is just Dr. Campensa again. Just officially, I want to thank Sarah and Angela. Like I said, this started a while back and really now has grown all the way out through NICO 5, which I just never could have envisioned. So Jose St. John with his support in Summit County, and then Sarah and Angela's support getting this out to NICO 5 was really fantastic. So I I definitely wanted to thank you guys.
Yeah, kudos to everyone involved. This is awesome. It's exciting. I think we're all looking forward to rolling it out and learning and becoming better for these unfortunate events. So I greatly appreciate all of your time today presenting to the group.